focus then, Bank of America believes foreign investors are turning constructive on India despite near-term macro challenges. While earnings growth expectations have been cut to 8.5% for FY26 and West Asia remains a concern, Bank of America Securities says pessimism is running high and India may need not deliver high returns. Listen into an excerpt of this conversation with Sajid Mangat.
Since then, we have cut down earnings estimates back to about 8.5%. So this is the third year in a row where we expect earnings to give you single-digit growth. But that said, I think there is pain from the cycle, and as this fades, I don't think this is a permanent thing. As the West Asia crisis fades, as oil prices cool off, as the supply chain bottlenecks that India is faced with start to ease, we will. You already have headline growth, and then you will start to have bottom line growth as well.
It's interesting that we may not have outperformed our peers in Asia and other markets, but we are holding on to our valuations at nearly 20 times forward earnings or so. How do you look at that thing? How are FIs reacting to that resilience of the valuation which is holding up at that level?
Yeah, look, I think the interesting thing is valuation has always been an overhang for the Indian markets for global investors through the up and the down. It has remained a problem for any bottom-up investor looking at India. I think people are willing to pay the premium if they start to see growth come back. The problem is when you have those valuation multiples, but with low earnings growth and low earnings growth visibility is where the challenge is then for people who are looking at the markets to invest in. So if you solve for growth and earnings growth, people are okay paying the kind of multiple that India has seen historically. And any which way, with the kind of selling that we have seen both from foreigners, from private equity investors, from founders selling stakes, the valuation compression has naturally occurred, because if you look at the markets, at the very least have time corrected despite economic growth and earnings growth in the single digits. The markets have gone nowhere, so the valuation correction has already happened, and if you start to look at dollar term, then it has corrected even more.
So do you think that we are at the fag end of that time correction and the dollar correction, and it's time that the foreign investor will look at India as a long-term play rather than the short-term one where the earnings may be compressed?
So we can't rule out the here and now issues. They are very real. I won't be foolhardy and say that that it's all rosy from here on. But I would say one thing: there definitely is peak pessimism in the markets, and there is definitely a lot of questions being raised around pain, which seems more cyclical in nature. And I think people are starting to identify with some of these as permanent. It is not going to be. India always surprises both the optimists and the pessimists alike. And I think at this point, given how pessimistic this sentiment has become, we will not need a whole lot to be able to start delivering returns. In fact, from where we are at this point in the markets, we feel like we could deliver 10% index returns till the end of the year.
Interesting. You said you expected low turnout of foreign investors, but you were surprised by the kind of interest that has come in. And that's interesting, because even if Indian markets have not given them enough return, they have that interest of having India in their portfolio, and it's a question of whether it's underweight or neutral at this point in time. But what is it that they're looking for?
So I think the idea is for an event like this and conferences like this is to be able to find out what the new, our tagline is looking for the new growth frontiers for the economy and for the markets. I think there is definitely a shift in terms of the focus that India that where is the Indian economy starting to see green shoots? What are some of the areas which are driving the next phase of growth? And if you look at what is happening around the world, you can clearly see growth coming through in, energy security, and then energy security means different alternatives, renewables, green hydrogen, and different forms of power. There is defense, which is kicking in. Infrastructure spend has always been, India has been an infrastructure starved country, and that is going to be continuously invested in. So these are areas where people are looking for ideas. AI is something that in the large cap universe at this point, India is not having a big story, but I'm sure there is, if you look under the surface, a lot of what is happening around AI is probably in the our business models which are being created in either in the private sector or in the private companies or in the startup ecosystem which are just around listed.
And do you see that when you speak about AI, and the general trend is being that India is an anti-AI trade which is happening, money flowing from a high valuation market, funding low valuation markets like Taiwan or a Korea or other markets. Do you see hope for Indian IT there?
So it's a tricky one to answer. I think there are people who believe that, and it is quite polarized. The view there is quite polarized. Some believe that the Indian IT services whole business model is put to question by the AI trade. The other side is that IT services companies will evolve and adapt. And they have enough cash flow, they have the resilience, and they have shown this in the past where there were threats that seemed like existential for the IT services space. This time, obviously, it's much bigger and it could last longer. But I'm sure there is enough that these companies have in them, both in terms of depth of management and business models that they can evolve to adapt to the new AI world. And we are starting to see alliances of this kind already form by companies like TCS, Wipro. We saw them in the headlines just last week about how they were partnering with AI companies to build business models.
Is IT a big talk in the entire conference of how Indian IT is coping up or transitioning itself from a traditional IT service to an AI tech services company?
It's definitely a question that people are asking about, and we'll find out more over the course of the next 3 days in the conference.
Interesting. You spoke about capital goods, you spoke about defense, you spoke about infra. These are the evergreen stories there. Still, we don't get much flows coming in from the market. What is it that is the foreign investors looking for? Because there are healthy order books, many of them having multi-year order books which they're sitting on. What exactly is going to bring them back and say that, okay, let me have my positioning at this point in time?
So, the market is globally is attracting flow towards only one story. In the front and center of it is tech, is AI, and it's hard to pull away from the fact with near-term vision. And now, whether it is a bubble, it is not a bubble, how long can this last is anybody's guess. But that's not just an India problem; it's a problem for across markets, and even within markets, it is within the sectors as well. If you look at how narrow the rallies have been, even for markets which are at all-time highs, whether it's Korea, Taiwan now, or the US, the market rally has been led by only a handful of stocks. If you look at the median returns, it's still pretty pedantic. So it's not just an India problem, is one. When foreign investors are looking for ideas in India, I think they are also at the back of the mind. They know that the AI trade may not last forever, and when that fades, they will have to look at ideas, and we think there is a pullback at some point that will come, but they will have to get ready for what next. And then India will definitely be at a market that will start to attract flows once that AI trade fades.